This is WICR.
From the basement of La Penta, this is your host, The Rock is on this Monday, February 6, 2017. First of all, before we start our show, and we get into some sports topics, or the latest sport topics, just want to say Happy New Year. Hope everyone had a great New Year's, great Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever holiday you celebrate, and everyone has a great start of the semester so far. So that's that. But we have a lot to get to today, and our first topic of the day is... Sorry about that, fixing the light. But our first topic of the day is the Super Bowl. Before we get into the Super Bowl, before we get into the in-depth analysis of this game, I just want to say, folks, I watched a lot of Super Bowls, during my tenure or as a kid growing up, or just basically as a football fan, and I have to say, this was probably, I have never been so distraught and so disgusted after watching a team's performance, or after any Super Bowl. And last night, it was just, a perfect word to describe it, it was just an absolute train wreck. An absolute train wreck. Because you know me, being a Jet fan, I was pulling for the Falcons, and it just seemed like they had so much momentum, so much, like they were that close of getting the Lombardi Trophy and winning it for the city of Atlanta. But you know what? Tom Brady being Tom Brady, Patriots never giving up, come back to tie the game in regulation, force overtime. Believe it or not, that was the first Super Bowl to ever go into overtime. So the first 50 Super Bowls never went into overtime, but then 51, or the second side of 50, or the next 50 I should say, first one, 51, goes into overtime. Crazy, isn't it? But you know what? With that being said, let's dive into the facts here. Now, unless you were living under a rock last night, or just had remotely no interest of watching the game, the Falcons were dominant throughout three-fourths of the game. They were just flat out dominant. Matt Ryan was leading methodical offense. The offense was clicking on all cylinders. They had a running game going. Passing game was elite. Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu, Tyler Gabriel, all those guys were making catches, making plays, and setting up the Falcons in great position. Matt Ryan, looking at his stats, finished the game with 17 for 23, 284 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And also defensively, in the first half, the Falcons were pretty dominant as well. Watching the game, their defense was reminiscent, and it was kind of similar to watching Seattle's defense when they went to back-to-back Super Bowls. Now, granted, Dan Quinn was the architect of that defense, or he was the defensive coordinator for the Seahawks when they went to those Super Bowls. But you know what? It was similar. They were quick. They were elusive. They were forcing turnovers. They were just frustrating Brady and the Patriots in the first half. And they had a pick. They forced a fumble early in the first quarter when New England was driving, and they had a pick six by Robert Alford, and it just seemed like it seemed like Mardi Gras in the first half of the Falcons. Arthur Blank was ecstatic. He thought his team was going to get a Super Bowl, was going to win the championship. They were going to win the Super Bowl. And at one point, the Falcons were winning by 25. They were up 28-3. 28-3. And then going into the fourth quarter, they were up 28-9. As New England missed an extra point. Or missed the extra point, I should say. And it just seemed, and then after the fourth quarter, after the third quarter, you had a sense where it was like, you know what, the Falcons are going to win. They got this. New England has no chance. Brady, Belichick, they're all disgruntled. They can't believe what's happening. Patriots, it's all a matter of time for them to self-destruct. But you know what, folks? The complete opposite happened. And you talk about a turn of events, especially in a Super Bowl. Now, let me just give you guys another recap, or a recap of the fourth quarter. Heading into the fourth quarter, the Falcons were up 28-9, up 19 points with about just a little under 15 minutes to go, because they started off the fourth quarter with a punt. So they're up 28-9, and Brady, who finished the game with the Super Bowl record with 62 completions and 466 yards, he had to claw his way back. The guy had to claw his way back to get back in the game. Brady had to claw his way back. They kept on throwing, and for a guy to throw 62 passes in a game, it just seems in a way unprecedented. Because how many times is a guy going to throw that many passes? How many times is that guy going to throw 62 passes? Not even in a Super Bowl game, but just a game in general. And for a quarterback to throw that many passes in a game, that just shows you New England was down what seemed like to be an insurmountable lead. And that's why I said this game, or watching this game, I felt so distraught and so disgusted with the Falcons, because they had the momentum. They had New England by its neck. They were the dominant team. And the problem was they just couldn't finish. And that's just frustrating. Because I can guarantee you, even if you weren't a Falcons fan, most people were rooting for the Falcons to win because they hate New England. They have a reputation in the history of cheating, Deflategate, Spygate, videotaping the Rams walkthrough before Super Bowl 36, you name it. And then Brady, just always ripping the hearts of opposing teams' fans, ripping the hearts of opposing teams' fans and other team and opposing players. And also, let's not forget, in that fourth quarter, it seemed like the Falcons were just clueless. Dan Quinn had no concern of clock management. They got cute. They felt they had an insurmountable lead, and they blew it. And it's just ridiculous. It's the Super Bowl. You don't get brownie points for making phenomenal plays. Doesn't matter how you win. You can struggle offensively throughout the whole game, and if you win 3-0, you still win. I'm telling you, that was just late in the game. It was just atrocious for the Falcons down the stretch. They could have milked the clock. Should have played a little more conservative. I think they were over aggressive, and it was just flat out ridiculous. And then they're just making some asinine and just idiotic plays. And I'm going to get into that right now. Alright, New England, this was about around the 9:40 mark. New England was, it was around the 9:40 mark. New England had just scored a field goal. So a little less than 10 minutes ago, New England scored a field goal. It was 28-12. Falcons get the ball. And they're around their 35-yard line, 36-yard line, right? It's 3rd and 1, right? They're on 35-36. It's 3rd and 1 with 8.5 minutes to go. And the clock's ticking because they ran the ball. You know what? And this is how I think. If I was a coach, this is what I would have done. You have a 2-score lead. You have momentum. Even if you don't get the first down, chew up the clock. Kill every second you can. Give the opposition very little to absolutely no chance of coming back in the game. Because not just in the Super Bowl, in football in general, you got to have a concept of time and clock management, knowing what to do, when to do it, and then when to take the risk, when not to. Because on that play, on 3rd and 1, instead of running the ball, which even if they didn't, instead of running the ball on 3rd and 1, they passed it. They elected to pass, and then Devontae Freeman, the star running back for the Falcons, missed a block Matt Ryan fumbled, and then that gave New England a boost of energy and some confidence and momentum, not to say the least. Because you gotta look at it this way: even if you run the ball in that situation and you don't get the first down, you're chewing up seconds, and that's already 40 to 50 seconds right there. And New England would have had the ball deep in their own territory with 7.5 minutes to go. And you know what? If you watched that game last night, New England was just a dip and dunk offense. Dip and dunk, meaning they would just throw a little pass here, get maybe 5-6 yards, and you know what? If you watch the game, New England was very conservative. They really didn't go in no huddle until maybe the 2-minute warning. They were just very conservative. They ran a play, go back to the huddle, circle up, and then they were hiking the ball with maybe 10-15 seconds left on the play clock. And that just shows you, you thought, hey, they don't really have a concept of time. They're the trailing team, and they're just taking their time. Whereas Atlanta was leading, they were the team that was winning, and they just seemed like they were rushing, like they were trailing. But yet on that drive, or after the fumble, New England scored a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. So now it's 28-20. And on the second to last drive, with about a little less than 6 minutes to go, Atlanta gets the ball back, right? First play, Devontae Freeman has about a 40-something yard catch. 40-something yard catch. And he brings the ball to midfield, and then he has a few good runs here and there. And also, Julio Jones, who had a phenomenal catch. And it was a great throw by Matt Ryan. Phenomenal throw by Matt Ryan. They have the ball at the New England 22. And this is around 4 minutes, around the 4-minute mark of the fourth quarter. 28-20 Falcons, right? So they run one play. They lose a yard. They lose a yard. Not bad, but lose a yard. Okay, now it's 2nd and 11. New England 23. 3 minutes and 56 seconds to go. And New England has 2 timeouts at the time. And this is just another boneheaded, asinine play by the Falcons. Instead of just running the ball and just trying to get a field goal, if you get a field goal in that situation, you're up 2 scores. And who knows, maybe New England burns a timeout and they lose it. And in that situation, they probably would have walked out with maybe 1 timeout and the 2-minute warning, or no timeouts and just the 2-minute warning. And I've said this over and over again, the Falcons just got cute and got overly aggressive. And they didn't need to be. Because after the 2nd and 11, or after the play run on 2nd down, they got a holding penalty. So that's 2nd and 19 or 2nd and 20. Then they get a sack, so that pushes them out of field goal range. So you had an opportunity to go up 2 scores, and they blew it again. Unbelievable. And referring back to the Julio Jones catch, when he made that play and he made that tiptoe catch on the sideline, you figured, hey, it's over. Falcons are going to win this game. And you see Belichick, livid, irate, because he even thought the game was over at that point. Because the way New England was going offensively, they weren't getting anything done. They pretty much fed off the defensive plays, or the plays that the defense made, because the defense put them in good field position. But still, just an ugly, ugly game for the Falcons down the stretch. There's no denying it. And then, before we go into break, I just want to say, the time of possession, though, and Dan Quinn should be aware of this. He should have been aware of this. Him being a defensive coach. The New England Patriots, and this is the time of possession they had, and this includes the overtime, had the ball for 40 minutes. Actually, it doesn't include overtime. This is just regulation. My apologies. They had the ball for 40 minutes and 31 seconds, Atlanta had it for 23 minutes and 27 seconds. So it wasn't as if the Falcon defense was horrendous and abysmal. They were playing lights out, and they were playing pretty well for the most part. They just got tired and they ran out of gas, and they were on the field too many times. I think they were on the field for close to 100 plays, believe it or not. If you're Dan Quinn, you have to be cognizant of that. Hey, my defense needs a breather. They've been on the field too long. I gotta chew up every second I can possibly take. Because, referring back to that 2nd and 11, even if the Falcons don't get a first down, yes, you want to get the first down to ice the game. But you know what? The worst thing that could have happened in that situation is if they just got, maybe 5-6 yards at best, or maybe get 5 or 6 yards, and kick the field goal with maybe 2.5 to 3 minutes to go, somewhere in that ballpark. And maybe let's say New England killed the timeout, or used one of their timeouts. So they would have had they would have to score a field goal and a touchdown and a 2-point conversion to tie the game in a span of 2.5 minutes. And then you had to hope for the onside kick, or they get the onside kick, and those are very rare. Because New England tried to attempt an onside kick earlier in the game, didn't work out, and Falcons capitalized on that. But still, man, honestly, it's like New England had to have a million things go right, and Atlanta had to have a million things go wrong, and it just seemed like everything, whatever the Patriots needed to go right, went right, and whatever the Falcons needed to go wrong, went wrong. And it showed. It just flat out showed. And if you're a Falcon fan or a Falcon player, honestly, I don't know how you're going to get over this. I mean, you just blew the biggest lead in Super Bowl history. Because prior to last night, the biggest lead in the Super Bowl was 10, or the biggest deficit was 10. Honestly. And I always say, if you have you never know when you're going to get this opportunity again. You never know. Now the Falcons could be they seem like they're a team that's on the rise. Great head coach, great leadership, and great locker room guys, and a phenomenal owner in Arthur Blank. But still, this was a game. It wasn't as if this game was a back and forth seesaw battle, and the Falcons just happened to be on the losing end. It wasn't like that. They had a 28-3 lead. They were up by 25, and they lost. Just baffling. There's just no words to describe it. It's just unbelievable. Baffling and unbelievable. That concludes this segment.